I awoke to the sound of water splashing and the harsh shriek of a goose, its honking sounding like a stog car alarm blasting at full volume. Fumbling into boots, I sprinted across the yard towards my secluded pond, hoping against hope that I would catch sight of a lost dog or perhaps a raccoon causing mischief. What I saw instead made me stand stock still in shock, indignation boiling away in my heart. There, in my pond, thigh-deep, stood Linda from the subdivision across the way, fishing rod held in one hand, plastic wine glass in the other, shrieking as my resident goose bit at her posterior. Her floppy hat blew away on the ripples, and a soggy folding chair tipped over close beside it, rounding out a scene so ridiculous it looked plucked directly from a bad sitcom. Only the joke was her invasion of my land without a flicker of asking permission. I stood there on the muddy riverbank, figuring my tranquil retirement fantasy had just burst into an unasked-for war. For years, that pond had been my haven, a piece of heaven purchased with the life savings I'd accumulated after 3 decades of battling fires and bearing strangers from burning structures. All I'd ever sought was quiet. That's why I purchased this country patch, for the silent. The spring-fed pond was more than water to me. It was a living testament to every sacrifice I'd made. I rebuilt it by hand, stocking it with bass, catfish, and a few lucky koi. I constructed a dock myself, placed benches beneath weeping willows, and hung solar lights along the shore for stargazing nights with my dog, Rusty. It wasn't merely mine legally, it was mine emotionally and spiritually. So to see Linda strutting around as if she owned it snapped something deep within me. She hadn't walked in accidentally either. She'd camped out, cooler, tackle box, and a Bluetooth speaker playing country music full blast. I just stood there blinking for a second, trying to decide if perhaps I was dreaming. Linda, clueless, pulled in a thrashing catfish and let out a triumphant whoop, tossing her wine glass into the air. Rusty yapped warningly, shaking me out of my reverie, clearing my throat loud enough to send crows scattering. I watched Linda spin mid-toast, blinking at me like I was the one intruding. "Oh, hey, neighbor," she chirped, wading toward the bank without an ounce of shame. "Thought I'd enjoy the community pond today. Perfect weather, huh?" Community pond. The words slapped harder than any punch. I clenched my fists. Linda was the neighborhood busybody, the kind who believed her HOA badge granted her dominion over everything she could see. Until today, she'd confined her tyranny to passive-aggressive lawn signs regarding grass heights or mailbox paint colors. I'd kept my head down, hoping eventually she'd lose interest and go away. Evidently, I'd miscalculated her audacity. "This is private property," I said calmly. "My pond. You're trespassing." Linda emitted a high-pitched little laugh that made my teeth ache. "Oh, come on," she said, brushing me away like I was ridiculous. "Everyone knows the HOA owns all the green spaces around here. You're lucky I didn't invite the whole block over for a picnic." I was stunned, trying to wrap my head around the sheer audacity of it. First of all, my property wasn't under her HOA's jurisdiction. Actually, escape from them was one of the things that led me to purchase it. Secondly, had it even been common ground, which it wasn't, she'd still have had to get permission to storm in as if she owned the property. Not feeling like getting into an argument up to my knees in mud, I nodded resolutely at her equipment. "Pack it up, Linda. You're trespassing. Leave." Her expression contorted into a smirk that held no good intention. "We'll see about that," she muttered. Packing up slowly enough, it appeared she was working toward a personal injury lawsuit. As her SUV spun out of my driveway, dust flying, I knew this was not a misunderstanding. You shrug off over coffee. This was war. That night, as fireflies flickered to life above the water, I walked around the pond with a hammer, hammering up no trespassing signs every 10 feet. I typed them out in red block letters. "Private pond, no public access, no fishing, no exceptions." Rusty walked beside me, unaware of the lines being drawn. But I knew in my heart that signs would not deter Linda. She possessed that type of self-righteous obstinacy that steamrolls right over logic and reason. And sure enough, the following morning, new footprints went directly to the water. A discarded beer can floated idly off the dock. Linda wasn't merely brazen, she was issuing a declaration of war. Drinking coffee on my front porch, I glared at the pond's glassy surface, taunted by its tranquility. Those footprints weren't just tracks, they were a message. She thought she could bully me, just like she had bullied the rest of the neighborhood. But she had picked the wrong person this time. Still, I decided to give her one last chance, even though my gut screamed it was pointless. Canceling my morning chores, I set a chair beneath the big oak tree that had a view of the pond and waited, Rusty at my side. Undefined, by mid-morning, her SUV rattled down my drive, country music blasting/undeaf. She parked half on my lawns again, leapt out, and started unloading. A folding chair, a tackle box, a cooler, and an ugly umbrella that she jammed into the ground like she was claiming territory. The raw, brazen disrespect was almost admirable. I walked up peacefully, Rusty by my side. Linda looked up and smiled as if we were friends from way back. "Morning, neighbor," she trilled, fiddling with her umbrella. "Hot one today? Great day to go fishing." "This is your last warning," I declared, loud enough to override her blasting music. "Private property. You're trespassing. Get out now." Linda didn't blink. She folded her arms, cocking her hip like she was going to teach a toddler how to do simple arithmetic. "Actually," she said condescendingly, "this pond is part of the community green space, according to the HOA charter. It belongs to everyone." I reached into my pocket and pulled out a folded wad of papers, property survey, deed, and boundary map, and extended them. "Here's the evidence," I said. "My property, my pond. You have no place here." She glided her eyes over the papers for a handful of seconds before leaving them on the ground in front of me. "The HOA disagrees," she sneered. "Talk to them." "There is no HOA jurisdiction here," I gritted out. "My land is beyond your reach. Your regulations don't apply." Linda grinned, her smile cold and predatory. "We'll see," she replied, retrieving a neon lure from her tackle box. "If there's water and fish, it's public. I'm enjoying my day." The anger boiled up inside me like heat radiating off the pavement. This wasn't ignorance. This was intentional. She was provoking me to escalate. Without uttering a word, I spun around on my heel and headed back toward the house, her humming trailing after me like a provocation. That would be the last carefree trip she ever made onto my property. I spent the remainder of the afternoon toughening up my defenses. I procured legal-grade no trespassing signs off the internet, phoned the sheriff's office to review my rights, and drew up plans for a subtle yet solid fence. I drove it to the county office, where a clerk, Denise, pulled up my property records. "Clear as day," she said, printing certified copies. "Your pond, your water rights, no public access." I felt solid again, armed with a new stack of documents. Perhaps only, Linda would back down when confronted with irrefutable evidence. But I knew better deep down. She would turn facts around before conceding that she was wrong. The next morning, I awoke with a knot in my stomach. From the porch, I could see her SUV parked boldly beside the pond. There she was, fishing blissfully as if nothing had transpired. I took my documents, whistled for Rusty, and walked down to her in silence. Standing there with the certified documents, I told her, "You're trespassing. Get off my property or I'm calling the sheriff." Linda snatched the documents from my fingers, looked at them as if they were pieces of junk mail, and threw them on the ground. "Cute," she taunted, "but HOA regulations still hold." "They don't," I retorted. "You don't have any jurisdiction here. I'm making a report of trespassing." Linda laughed, a harsh, piercing sound that it made Rusty growl at her. "Think anyone cares about a cranky old man monopolizing a pond?" she teased. "This is about community." I simply gazed at her, shocked. Resources? She treated me like I was stockpiling life-saving supplies rather than protecting my own legally held property. I walked back toward the house without saying a word, aware that fighting with her was like screaming into a hurricane. Inside, I phoned the sheriff, who told me they'd do something if she didn't go away. My attorney prepared a cease and desist letter in a matter of minutes. Later that day, I could hear voices behind the trees. Peering out, I noticed Linda had brought reinforcements. 3 women from the subdivision, each with fishing poles, coolers, and folding chairs. Their speaker was blasting that same country tune on repeat. It wasn't fishing anymore. It was a full-blown party. A flagrant group middle finger to my rights. I pulled out my phone and recorded it all. Every laugh, every beer can thrown, every illegal cast. By the following day, I made a complaint at the courthouse, submitting my videos, documents, and the cease and desist letter. The clerk, a thin man with thick glasses, stamped my papers without even wincing. "Happens more than you'd think," he muttered. "People see something and assume they're entitled to it." At the sheriff's office, Deputy Carter, a burly guy with a handlebar mustache, would watch the footage, chuckling when one of Linda's friends tripped over a cooler. "Open and shut," he said. "We'll issue warnings. If they come back, we'll arrest." Driving home, storm clouds thickened overhead, matching the tension swirling inside me. That night, Linda's SUV returned, accompanied this time by another vehicle. She got out, frowning for once rather than smirking, alongside a man in a tacky suit holding a clipboard, some HOA minion. "Good evening," and he said, striding up. "I'm Mr. Tate, HOA board. We've had reports of your abuse of community facilities." I stood leaning against the porch railing. "This is private property," I told him. "I've got the deed, water rights, legal papers. Your HOA doesn't have jurisdiction here." Tate stumbled, looking uncertainly at Linda, who nodded wildly behind him. "We'll look into it," he said, puffed up. "You may be facing fines." "Good luck," I said. "You're trespassing currently. Get out or I'm calling the sheriff." Linda's face flushed with anger, but Tate sensibly pulled her back to their vehicles. They took off in a cloud of dust and empty threats. The actual line was crossed the following morning. A dented pickup truck drove into my driveway. Two men in neon vests leaped out, one with a clipboard, the other with a duffel bag. "We're here for an HOA environmental inspection," clipboard stated. "I didn't ask for one," I snapped. "Mine's my land. Mine's my pond. You're trespassing," I warned them. They waved documents at me, telling me it was merely a community resource inspection. But then the second man took out a canister from his duffel bag, and it was marked pond treatment chemicals. My gut fell. They didn't just want to intrude. They intended to poison my fish. "Off my land," I growled. They stalled for a beat, then finally stepped back, grumbling about non-compliance as they left. I knew immediately Linda was responsible. It wasn't trespassing anymore. She was attempting to destroy my pond. That evening, I rigged trail cameras above the property, concealed and motion activated. Shortly after midnight, Rusty's low growl awakened me. I saw bobbing flashlights down near the water through the window. I snuck out and noticed three figures, Linda included. "Dump it," she whispered, pushing one of the guys lugging the chemical canister. I turned on my flashlight, shining them with the strongest beam. "Drop it! Drop it!" I yelled. They stood still. Linda screamed, slipped, and splashed into the shallow water. The man dropped the canister and took off, the others in hot pursuit. Linda flailed about, wet and angry, then hurried back to her SUV, tires squealing as she disappeared into the distance. I picked up the canister, toxic algae poison in lethal quantities, designed to kill everything in the water. My fists were trembling with anger. In the sheriff's office, I dropped the canister and footage on Deputy Carter's desk. His jaw tightened as he watched. "This is felony vandalism and environmental sabotage," he said grimly. "We'll take it from here." Word spread like wildfire. Linda had always teetered on the edge of outrageous, but now it was criminal. The footage of her muddy fall went viral across local Facebook groups, spawning memes like Pond Princess and Fish Fiasco. The HOA rushed to disavow her. Tate resigned. Linda fell silent. Her condescending yard signs disappeared. Her smugness deflated. In court, I sat with a fat file of evidence, Rusty waiting patiently in my truck. In the other room, Linda scowled, her slick attorney flicking through a thin file, already smelling defeat. My attorney, Claire, presented it neatly. Deeds, water rights, sheriff's reports, and the incriminating video of Linda's chemical scheme. The courtroom suppressed giggles as Claire showed the video of Linda's mudslide. Linda's attorney attempted to assert confusion regarding property and environmental issue, but the judge's face told the true tale. Sheer incredulity. Under oath, Linda testified that she believed the pond was shared. Claire tore that alibi to shreds with evidence, photographs of signs, cautions, and Linda's own derisive laughter recorded on tape. Linda wilted beneath the evidence, her alibis shattering. The decision came down hard, guilty of trespassing, attempted vandalism, and endangerment to the environment. Linda was hit with heavy fines, restitution, and a restraining order, keeping her off my property forever. Her face contorted with anger as she stormed out of the courtroom. Outside, I stood for a moment, allowing the victory to sink in. It wasn't winning in the courts. It was keeping what was mine from a woman who felt she could simply take whatever she wanted. Coming home, the sun broke over the clouds and turned the pond to gold. Rusty barked, tail thumping. "We're going home, boy," I said. Linda vanished from the neighborhood shortly afterward. Her house fell into disrepair, stories circulating that she was preparing for a stealthy move. Neighbors I'd hardly known began dropping by with peas and handshakes, swapping tales of Linda's decades-long history of drama and petty despotism. It seemed like the neighborhood itself was mending. I rebuilt the dock, seeded wildflowers along the bank, and had quiet parties for considerate friends and neighbors. I cut a new sign for the front entrance one night, "Private pond fishing, by invitation only," Linda excluded. Neighbors giggled when they saw it. Even the mayor smiled at a town fundraiser. Fishing with a retiring kid named Noah one afternoon, I taught him the respect the pond gave me. As the seasons changed and the pond prospered, koi swimming in the water, willows providing cool shade, my haven remained intact. One winter's night, standing beside the frozen pond beneath an evening sky sprinkled with stars, Rusty by my side, I whispered to the land, "You're safe." And that silence, that hard-won, lovely silence, was my victory. Won through perseverance, through principle, through a struggle that established that there are certain things always worth fighting for.